I'm Patrick Lugo, author, illustrator, comic creator, and art director for Kung Fu Magazine.
I'm Kurtis Fujita, comic book creator, also a Kung Fu instructor.
The Comics Fu Show, where we stand at the crossroads of comics, Kung Fu, and all kinds of crazy pop culture.
Hello.
And we're back.
We're back on the scene.
Yes, welcome to the Comics Fu Show, Kurtis, where you're a co-host.
Yes, I am, along with my co-host, Patrick Lugo. See, I have it down now. I know what
you guys, look at it. I'm trying to point at you, and I always mess it up.
Well, cool. Well, we don't need to introduce ourselves because we have that snazzy new intro, so we can just get right into it. So, how you been doing?
Good. Keeping. It's been a very stormy spring, as those of us who live in the Bay Area know. So, on the one hand, huge amounts of rain, but glorious green grass everywhere, which hasn't been great for the allergies, but the dog loves it, so that's been pretty glorious. Oh, and making comics and sending them to people. There's that too.
Yeah. So on that note, how's things going with the Tiger's Tail volume?
Coloring proceeds apace. I'm so excited with some of the scenes I've been working on, but I can't share them because they would be too spoilerish. These are some of the epic moments that I think are gonna be like, wow, some folks. So I'm eager to share them, but I can't. Sure. However, I have sent out the digital editions to my backers of the digital version. I'm just about to send out my Hung Bao comic cards, which were my little single card comics, right? And they're gonna just fit in a nice little envelope like so. Comic, some stickers, a bunch of little swag. So those will go out to backers this week.
Excellent.
And then things will keep moving. Then from there, I'll send out volume 1 items, and then the volume 1 and 2 for the big finale. Well, the big finale will be the Wuxia Warriors at the very end, but that's in the summer. There's time yet for those folks to give me their details, right? Because I have to capture their likeness in a piece of kung fu art.
Definitely. And I love the ones that you did before. I mean, they just were gorgeous. My favorite one there was one with the Phoenix. I remember the one with the Phoenix was probably my favorite, but that's great.
Yeah, that was a special one, but I'll save that for a Wuxia Wednesday session where we can go dive deep into that, because I want to hear about where things are for Shadow Ghost. Sure.
So things are coming along pretty nicely. It's one of those things where you kind of set the finish line and you're pretty sure you're there, and then the finish line kind of just keeps shifting, and so there's always there's just a billion little things, as you know, right? And I'm trying to commit to our backers, and I probably will in the next update. But for instance, this is a good example. So this, I had finished essentially doing all the books, getting ready to fulfill. So you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll just order a copy of each edition, just so I can make sure everything looks right, because it looked great in digital form, right? So I'll show you what we have here. So of course, they're sliding all over the place. It's like colors. So we have the standard edition here. You've seen it before, but here we go. Right?
It's right there on my desk.
Yeah. So this is the standard edition with my cover. Then we have the Dean Zachary cover, right here. Everything was good to go, and then the special edition with the Stephen Butler cover here. And so the thing about the special edition is it has 16 extra pages of concept art. And this is the crux of it. So as I got to the 16 pages of concept art, which I'll add look great in digital format, I started noticing that there was these artifacts on it. This should be a flat background, and there should not be this kind of different shade here. And so that was for all 16 pages of concept art. This digital artifact kept popping up. So I talked to the printer because I didn't see it on my end. I didn't see it in PDFs or flat images or anything like that. And he said it was actually an artifact from when things were put together in InDesign. And so we were able to resolve the issue. But this is just another example of how things take longer. And I really thought I was being kind of too deep in the grass and kind of too detail oriented, because it costs money to print books. Thought, oh, maybe I'll just send it out. But something in my gut said, you know what? Just spend the money, take the extra time, and I'm so glad I did, because as frustrating as that was, I'm just so glad it didn't go out to the backers, because that would have driven me crazy. So that's what
that would have kept you up at night,
it
right?
would, and this already kept me up at night, and it was just this one version, so yeah, so like those kind of little quality control things, and yeah.
Yeah, it's always tricky. I mean, we were just before we started, we were talking about like print production for, apparel and stuff. And that's a place also where you'll find some unexpected little, stray pixels on the edges of the print area, that you won't see until you get the t-shirt and you're like, oh my God,
No, totally. So I was annoyed that it happened. I'm glad caught it before it went to full production. And then the Kung Fu skills portion, the video portion, which again, Patrick worked on the logo, created the logo, I should say. That is filmed and is in the process of being edited at this time. So that's coming along nicely as well. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at, coming along.
I noticed on your recent update, you had some of the storyboarding for it, for those who've subscribed, right?
Yeah.
So we should take a moment to let folks know that they could subscribe there for your stuff.
Thank you. Yeah,
so that you can get a hint of like some of these processes and not have to wait for an actual live show for those updates.
Definitely. And like the idea of storyboarding, because it's funny, you and I are so into the visual arts. We just, I don't know, sometimes I forget that I know the process, not everybody does. So it's important that other people see it, because then they understand why is it taking this amount of time, And the thing about the storyboards that's so funny is, especially in my online classes, a lot of times when people teach martial arts or there's martial arts instruction videos, it's just head on the person doing all the movements. And Kung Fu is really complex, So fortunately, because of the comic book, animation background, and storyboarding background, I actually take camera angles as if I was with my students in class. So there's things where it's over the shoulder so that they can tell what's left, what's right. All those little details make it a more solid experience, for learning. So that's kind of what's been going on.
It's fascinating that you mentioned that, because that's a conversation that we had often at the kungfumagazine.com studios, right? When we would be filming masters, right? There's the demonstrate, we had the studio, we would film the master and they would demonstrate their art. But just in terms of trying to use that in an educational context, right? We would half the times have to film them from over the shoulder, because that's how students typically would see the form being demonstrated, right? Because they're in the back of the class and the Sifu's at the front of the class, and they're all kind of facing the same direction. And so there'd be these times when we would have to debate between where, the shot should be over the shoulder, but it looks prettier face on. And, we want to show face for the master. And so there's this balancing act between, what's educational and what's aesthetic, I guess.
No, totally. And that's like a huge storyboarding thing, right? It's like what is the essence of the story? Like I was talking to, we had our friends on the show, my friends Tim DeVar, Michael Chang, William Yu. We had them all from animation world. I was talking with them the other day, and they were talking about when people first do storyboard action sequences, because they worked on all the DC stuff like Batman, Justice League, all those things. And the young people will have, you have like 3 fights maybe in an episode or something. And the novice who gets the first act fight should be good, but it's like an appetizer. It shouldn't be the knockdown, drag out fight, the epic fight, So there will be a young person that wants to prove himself, or a new person, and they'll just throw everything in this beginning fight. And it's like, well, then what do we do for the last act? So they'll sometimes have to go, as a director, go back and trim it and say like, no, I know this is cool. I have to take out this. And the novice will be upset, he took out this thing. It would have been cooler. And this. But in the context of the whole story, you can't go full drum solo or full guitar solo for the whole song, basically, is what it boils down to.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, ever since we had that conversation with that crew, we've been basically watching an episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, like every night, just like, let's just watch it from the beginning. So we're like in season 4 at this point, somewhere right towards the end, and it's just like the epic fight. It's not even like the element bending anymore. It's just like some badass martial arts
Yeah.
happening right there and then. And so that's been a lot of fun. You know, I've seen them before, but the Miss is seeing these for the first time.
Oh, that's
So
great.
it's kind of like, where has this been all her life? She keeps so.
Yeah, yeah. I just had lunch with Tim and William. William's the art director for the new Avatar things. I don't even know the full details of it. I know they're doing film and TV. I don't know any more of that. And he is super tight-lipped, and I'm very respectful, so I don't ask him. But he is working his tail off. I know that, and every now and then he'll just say something. It's never anything specific because, of course, NDA. You know, there's NDA, and then in the industry we call it the friend DA. Friend DA is like you can say a couple things, but he is super tight-lipped. I don't blame him for it. But from at least as what I know is how hard he's working on it. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. So that should be pretty cool.
Yeah. But let's get off that subject before we get anyone in trouble, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's really quickly go back to Shadow Ghost and mention that we've got a little video thing that we're going to share towards the end of the show to kind of loop back around all of our little Shadow Ghost processes. But we're really here for the Wondercon report, right?
Wondercon report. Okay. The Wondercon report. So I this will be a multimedia presentation. So let's go over. I'll give a little intro, and then I have some photos, and I have some swag that I got back. So let's just talk about WonderCon in general. WonderCon, you know, previously in the Bay Area, right?
I used to go to them regularly when they were right down the road in Oakland. Nice. Thanks to my Kung Fu magazine credentials, I could show up as a pro, get in for free, bring a +1.
That's great.
And then, you know, then they moved to San Francisco, but that's where I got to meet some actual famous people, because we'd go in and we'd interview certain movie stars and movie directors, once again under the Kung Fu magazine banner. You know, we tabled once in a while, but yeah, oh man, it hurt my heart when it left San Francisco.
Yeah, and I thought it was supposed to be temporary originally, but it looks like it's permanent now. You know, it's mainly in Anaheim, right across the street from Disneyland. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is a boon for you, because it's a much shorter drive now than it would have been trying to get to San Francisco.
Oh yeah, totally. And I'll be honest, I love San Diego Con, but WonderCon is probably my favorite in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of cool stuff, but it's not as crazy as San Diego Con. You know, it's really a nice convention. So my wife and I, you know, when COVID hit, we haven't been, you know, really out much. And so this was like one of the first times that we started kind of coming out, combination of COVID stuff and just trying to get the comic book done, you know. But it was nice. It wasn't as big as it was in the past. There was zero big name studios or comic book companies on the floor at all. Zero, which shocked me, you know. So that was a big surprise. And I don't know if that's just a sign of the time, sign of the economy, but that was pretty surprising to me. I think in the main hall where they have the big, you know, companies will come in and give presentations. You know, I saw Ridley Scott do one for Prometheus years ago. So I usually expect pretty big things. There really wasn't anything big there. There was just maybe the biggest thing they had was maybe like one TV, the Fear the Walking Dead TV show cast was there for a panel. And maybe there was one movie, but that was it. It was really, really mellow this year. So that was a surprise, you know. But the floor was packed, you know, full of fun stuff, people and things like that. So I'll show you some of the cool stuff that I got. This is a piece of swag from, and you'll see in the photos, my old he was my colleague. He was almost like my boss, but one of the heads of Malibu Comics, a couple of them, Dave Olbrich and Tom Mason, they have a show called Geek View Tavern podcast. Really good show. So I recommend everybody checks it out. He was giving us some cool swag. I got this Geek View Tavern coaster, which is pretty on brand, right?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was nice. And I got that. And I actually had like a soda can insulator kind of thing too. So that was neat. And got to visit our friends at Machine Comics, who were on the show for Tribal Force, right?
Yes. Fine creators of Tribal Force.
Definitely. So I stopped by their booth, got to meet Gene Jimenez in person, and then went ahead and picked up this copy of theirs called Downtown, which is pretty
excellent.
Cool.
Look at that, signed.
Isn't that cool?
Signed by the whole crew. Awesome.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have the download of that, but nothing beats the hard copy. And incidentally, for any of our friends who also supported Tribal Force, I just got a notification today
Oh, yeah.
that copies are being shipped.
Nice.
Right. So Tribal Force has already leapfrogged me in that they're getting their stuff out already, which is awesome to know.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome. It's really cool. Really cool.
so yeah, how was it meeting Gene? You guys have this is your first meeting, right? Because you just
Yeah.
had a pre-recorded session and a few text messages. But
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, he's such a, let me see if I can throw up a photo. It was really, 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 really cool. He was let me see my window here. Give me a second. Actually, I'll show it afterwards. I'll just talk. Yeah, it was great. He was such a nice guy, so pleasant, so welcoming. It was just fun to talk about comic books, to talk about the Kickstarter scene, the indie scene, and then just to talk about. And it's such a catchword nowadays. It almost gets played out because sometimes I don't always feel everybody's sincere, but I definitely feel they are. The idea of representation and representing culture and things like that. We had a nice long talk about that, for Tribal Forces, if I understand correctly, the first Native American superhero team comic book. So we had a great talk about that.
yeah, I keep wanting. It's an aside. I should really talk to John Proudstar about it, but I keep wanting to call it the First Nations.
Oh, nice.
Superhero team. But
Totally.
then, but the Smithsonian Institute established it with a specific terminology, right? So even though I might want to change it for a flourish, that may not necessarily be the right thing to do.
Well,
even though for me it sounds fun.
it
right?
sounds cool. I mean, Rose by any other name, right? That kind
That's the marketing hat that I'm always wearing, right?
Yeah, it was cool. We met, and then I had an advanced copy of Shadow Ghost, so we just kind of we kind of traded, So I thought that was pretty cool. He was like, and he was like, "Oh, here, take one of my Tribal Force comics," because they had it there at the show, And I was like, I know as a comic book creator and as a business person, like that cost him money to print, So I told him, I said, "Thank you so much, but hold on to the copy. I already backed it. I'll wait to get mine in the mail because that's product, right?"
Right. Plus, it's opportunity, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That comic could be better off handed to Donnie Yen or whomever happens to be walking the convention floor.
Exactly. And then this is kind of cool. I went. I had actually had this book in my cart in Amazon for like a while. Like sometimes see something interesting, throw it in the cart, and then I can't afford it right now. Or whatever.
Yeah, save it for later.
Yeah, save it for later. I saved just so many things there. So I was going by this one art book table, and they had this was. Oops, sorry, that's you. Let me give it back to me.
That's me.
I got these two books called Framed Ink. It's all about storytelling and artwork. Gorgeous books. And the reason that I was prompted was not only because I had it in my Amazon Save for Later Forever. The actual author, Marcos Matu Mestre, was there. And so he actually did a drawing for me in each of the books. And it's just absolutely sumptuous design work, storytelling, framing, just great stuff. So I had to pick it up. I figured I'd pick up both because he was there. He'd sign both, and they gave me a discount because I bought both. So it was pretty cool.
Oh man, there's always room in the library for more of those kind of books, right? Just for the chance to you could just have them and just step up your game by just having them, right? You could absorb through osmosis some of the lessons that are in those books. So
totally, I think I can't hear it. Education is ongoing, and it's like once you have a certain skill set, like we both went to art college, right? You pick up your certain skill set, and then more than just having that specific skill set, you have the framework to learn from other stuff in the inside, like that book and other books like that, to learn from. So it's so worth it, and tax write-off if you have a business, right? Because it's learning, so can't go wrong.
Essential then.
Totally. I'll pull up some photos of Wondercon, and it was really nice to be at a con. Hadn't been one in years. There we go. All right, and where am I? All right, so I'll share the screen, and I'll show you guys, everybody, what this is looking like. There we go. Okay, so here's a photo of me, right here, of course, and then these are the founders of Malibu Comics and the Ultraverse line of comics. For those of you that don't know, Malibu Comics, independent comic book publisher back in the '90s, that I had the pleasure of working for as a teenager. And they got bought out by Marvel, and the company was folded at some point. But great times. So this right here is Chris Ulm. He was the editor in chief at Malibu. And this is Tom Mason, the creative director, and Dave Ulbrich, the publisher. Just really nice guys. I knew them when I was 15, just getting my start in the industry, and don't get to see them often. So it was really great to meet up with them. And show them, I gave them each a advanced copy of Shadow Ghost, so that was a pretty cool thing. My old mentors.
And effective use of those pre-printed issues.
Definitely, and it's kind of like tribute. They were so nice to me, and it was just nice to be able to show them, like, hey, this is what I'm doing now, based on way back then. And there was a panel for the Ultraverse line of comic books. For people that worked on it. So I was actually on my first panel. I should have brought it out. I have my own little name tag with the Comic-Con Wondercon logo, which I've been dying to get. And and then so this is the same crew. Over here is Larry Welch. He was an inker for Malibu Comics. And right here is going to be, you're going to hear this name later in the show, Jeff Johnson, phenomenal artist. He did Solitaire for Ultraverse, did the comic book The Way of the Rat, all sorts of great comic books. So Jeff Johnson was there as well. And yeah.
Did they give you any guff for our recent Ultraverse expose?
You know what? I thought they would, but they didn't say anything. I was like, okay, I was like, well, yeah. I think, but the nice thing was, everybody congratulated me on Shadow Ghost, which was, really nice. And because I worked there at a young age and I was on site in the office, it was like I learned from so many of the different departments and people, and that totally informed the production of Shadow Ghost. So it was kind of coming full circle, and then we took a lot of pictures. My wife and I went there. We took some pictures on the floor. I just always love taking photos of all the products, because I know I can't and shouldn't buy all of them, but I can take a cool photo, right?
Oh, indeed.
So Bandai had some great stuff there. This is from the Demon Slayer manga and anime series, also known as Kimetsu no Yaiba. And this was one of my favorite products they had there. They had all the figures, but they had this kind of vignette backdrop, which was just so cool for the different characters.
It's literally a mantelpiece, something that you put up.
Totally, kind of that, almost like that Alphonse Mucha kind of thing, where you have that really kind of graphic background, So that was great. And then they do such a great job at Bandai. They do cool stuff like this, where they kind of like have these translucent energy trails, with all the weaponry and stuff. Great stuff. And this one too. And then again, this was at with the Malibu crew. They had Squid Games. I love they had these chibi Squid Game, worker drone figures.
It looks, those things almost are begging to be little speakers as well.
Oh my gosh, you were so right. That would be an amazing little like Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah, just a little desktop speaker,
Dude, that is a great. Yeah, I mean the design. Oh man, that's so smart. There's me at the convention talking about my time at Malibu, and of course, what I'm so pleased, you can see my name printed on the name card. If you're a big con goer, that is the moment where you've been waiting for. So that was cool. There's Chris Ulm talking. Back to Bandai, Kamen Rider. I mean, just look at the details.
Oh, I know. If only I had if only I had a second room in my house, a second floor in my house,
Oh yeah, totally. And then of course they do such a great job lighting things. There's my wife and I. And,
excellent.
And here's Gene. There's Gene and me at the Machine Comics booth. That was really cool. Just a real blast. Over his shoulder, right here in the background, this was the artist for Downtown. So name escapes me at this moment, but
which we just looking at.
Yeah,
that's great. It's so awesome to be like, look at it, you guys are both flying your own colors.
Totally.
whole meeting of the minds. You know, there's something, I don't know. I mean, cons are always awesome. I always remember like, you know, hunting down those various tables, right, to like catch up with folks. But then now to have the extra component of the social media dynamic, and then
Oh,
now the Kickstarter dynamic, right? There's like a whole, there are layers to that meeting, to that.
definitely. And, you know, Gene and I were talking about this idea that it's like you get to a certain point in time where you bet on yourself, you know? And that's, I think that's really like the whole thing of being an independent creator. It's kind of like, you know, you may, whether you have a hard time getting help or there's help that you figure you can do it on your own or whatever, there's a moment where you just go, you know what, I can do this on my own. I bet on myself. And that's so empowering as a creator, right? That you know you can get your vision out there. Now with technology and distribution and crowdfunding, I mean, there really is no excuse. If you want to get it out there, you can get it out there in some shape or form, you know. So
Agreed.
yeah, so that was cool. And then of course, back to Bandai. Just love the detail of these Gundams. But I mean, you look at that price tag, 166. Little steep for me, you know. And Dragon Ball, they had a life-size Gohan, which is great. Ultraman, can't go wrong with Ultraman, right?
Right. Any size Ultraman is a life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's such an iconic design. I mean, just great, you know. I mean, these are the things that we talk about: great character design, great silhouette. What 2 to 3 colors, color scheme, you know.
Oh yeah.
Here's me and Chris Ulm. You know, I told the story before. You know, I chased after Chris Ulm's car in the parking lot of Malibu Comics, and he hired me on the spot when I wanted to get into the industry. So it's just it's so fun to see him now. Again, Demon Slayer. I love this one from Dragon Ball. He's starting to slice him in half, and just I love that detail. I mean, they totally get it. You know, just
Yeah. It's just toy technology has gotten so excellent.
oh, it's unbelievable. And then one more Squid Game again. Just great. I love how they got the look and the expressions down, you know, just priceless stuff. So yeah, that was that thus concludes my my WonderCon report.
That's awesome. Any announcement? I mean, you know, back in the day, you can go to these things and you'd get to see the trailer for the next movie that's coming out. You know, or you'd get the inside scoop on what Marvel's releasing on a given year.
Yeah.
Is that the case anymore? Did you catch any of those tidbits?
You know, the only thing they had there that was like a world premiere was the Saint Seiya Zodiac fighters, like Zodiac warriors. Like, you know, it's a Japanese, long-standing Japanese shonen manga and anime, and they had the live action crew there doing like a promotion, and I think they reviewed some footage. They showed some footage. But that was it. I was really surprised. It really, and again, this is my first con post-pandemic. Really, really more subdued. In a way, it was disappointing because I love the big flash of things, and my wife is kind of more in it for the pop culture part. On another side, what was so cool is the fan community was out there. You know, tons of cosplay, tons of vendors, and it's like it kind of brought back home where it all started, which was the fans. You know, I mean, you and I are of the age in the background where we would go to these conventions and it was 99% the fandom, you know, that was sustaining it, creating the content, creating the materials, doing everything. And it felt like a renaissance of that. Whereas the kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of bloated pop culture, you know, aspect and, you know, big studios weren't there. And I enjoy that. But I think it was very nice to know that regardless of whether it gets input from big corporations or finance from big corporations, the fans will be out there supporting the community. And that's what's important, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, because you know, we hear a lot of like like the classic example, San Diego Comic-Con is not for comics anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's for everything. But and then you have stuff like what Emerald City Comic-Con, MICE, SPX, like the small focused on comics conventions, you know, and then like WonderCon seems to be kind of in between, right? It was very strong comics roots. It went to Anaheim specifically for the movie like appeal and because like movies, right? It coincided with the whole surge of superhero and comic book movies, but it seems to be kind of like, from what I'm hearing from you, it's like an in between space. It's like
Mhm.
it's almost like the ultimate swap meet in a way.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Comic conventions originally felt more like swap meets, and they became more trade shows. And now
Mm.
we're kind of getting back to a little bit of that balance. My wife and I plan on going to San Diego Comic Con this year, and it'll be interesting to see the shift. Um, because it's I mean, it's all about money, right? So when the money is good and it makes sense for studios to come there and spend the money, they'll spend the money. But they're not there for any altruistic reason at all, right? It's pure business, it's pure money. Whether the money's in it or not, the fandom exists. And you can almost gauge the industry, right? Based on who's at attendance,
Yeah, yeah, so true. I mean, it's just yeah. I think of things like how cosplay has become such a prominent factor. That was something that,
Oh gosh.
when I was coming up, that was maybe a thing, but now it's its own thing,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the first cons I went to. I mean, like the idea of cosplay. There was a lady dressed as a superhero. It was like her own superhero. She literally had a towel wrapped around her neck and was like wearing like long johns, and that was her superhero outfit. And now it's like, oh my gosh, the level that people have gotten is just off the charts.
right. It's just like those toys, like the level of technology allows for such, epic implementation.
Oh
And
yeah.
then like the industry is like, oh, like there are whole booths devoted to like your cosplay necessities.
Well, have you seen the cosplay medics? Have you seen these guys? I've
I
seen
have
them.
not. No,
So
that's
so I think people just take it upon themselves. So they will come in and they'll have all these things, and they'll actually have like a sign that they'll say cosplay medic or first aid or whatever, and they have different colored thread, they have patches, they have zip ties, they have hot glue gun. Like, so somebody's cosplay is breaking down, you run over to the cosplay medic and go, oh, I got you. The guy will zip tie the sword hilt back on or whatever. And they're just, I don't think that they're endorsed by anybody. It's just a thing people do, and it's so cool. I saw a guy walking around with cosplay medic kind of gear.
oh,
So
that's awesome. It's a
yeah,
valuable service.
yeah. So it's pretty. It was just like Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, where's the cleric? Where's the cleric? Like, oh, there he is. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, back in our day, we would roll up a character that was the cleric that we all collectively played.
oh my
That
god,
we could all still play the character. I
different
want to be my
characters.
badass fighter. He wants to be his badass magician. So we'll just have Barry the cleric that we just own collectively, just so that
That's
there's
awesome. You had your own NPC.
yeah.
That's insane. That's smart. That's so smart. That is so smart.
Well, yeah, we specialize in what I guess you'd call like the Monty Hall dungeons.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that is
everything was
so
just always ramped up to 11.
cool. Oh, that's awesome. That is too cool. Great stuff. Well, yeah, that was kind of WonderCon. I did have another event I went to this weekend. If you're interested, I'll tell you about it.
I am. That's in fact. Let's just for a slight
Yeah,
change in
sure.
the vibe. Let's
Nice. I like that.
proceed.
I like that. It's almost like we're going upside down. Um, so my wife and I went to we love going to San Diego Comic Con. We love the big experiences that the studios do. And they had this event in the city of Montebello, which is here in Southern California. They had the Stranger Things experience. We had gone to one during peak pandemic, and it was a drive-through event, right? And I took my wife to it, and it was really cool. You drive through this whole structure, and there's different vignettes of the story and special effects and all this stuff. And the best part is it was on Skid Row, so I took my wife as a surprise. I said, I'm taking you somewhere for a surprise. And she was like, when it was a steak dinner. And then we're driving like at dusk into Skid Row. And she was like, what are you doing? And then we got to the Stranger Things experience, and it was cool, So yeah, but this was the new version. This was a walkthrough, kind of like a haunted house kind of situation. So I'll share with you. We took some photos. They didn't allow us to take photos of a lot of the main event, surprisingly, but after we were there, I understood why. Let me just go ahead and open that window just a minute. But yeah, it was really cool. It was the final day, and we decided to go there. So there we go. Share screen, and one more minute. Technical difficulties. Yeah. All right.
Minor lags.
Totally. Well, it's like, do you want? I'm trying not to pull up my YouTube screen here. So you can see all the stuff I've been researching. All right, there we go. So we went in the middle of the day. This was outside, the outside part. They had a lot of the props and the actual vehicles. Do you watch Stranger Things, Patrick?
I've fallen behind. In all honesty, I've watched the first few seasons religiously, and then kind of became sporadic. I'm one of those drop off viewers on Netflix. There's not many things that I'll stick to the end with, but
that's okay. That's the joy of Netflix. It's like non-committal.
If you can't get through it in that first night, the chances of finishing the series diminishes significantly.
There you go. So that was the outside. So you actually enter, but it's just not in order. So this is the main villain of the most recent season. Vecna. They had closing opportunities. They had the Demogorgon. So there's my wife with the Demogorgon.
Classic.
Yeah, and of course, my kung fu students must be so disappointed in me sometimes, but have to do the tiger claw on the Demogorgon because what else is going to stop it, right? There's a photo of us there. And then they had, when you exit the main experience, which I'll talk about, but when you exit, they have all this cool 80s themed, installation.
The memorabilia.
They have a bar, they have ice cream shop, pizza place, of course, lots of merch. So this was the upside bar, and this is the main floor. They had some cool Stranger Things. And so if you're familiar with the series, Scoops Ahoy is the ice cream shop. They actually had a Scoops Ahoy there where you can get Scoops Ahoy ice cream. And they had a family video, which is where the character Steve works at. And this brought back memories, seeing the Freddy Krueger cardboard stand up,
Oh yeah. We both are survivors, veterans of the 80s.
Oh, totally. Yeah, so that was kind of neat. They had a bunch of VHS cassettes there, and I thought it was for sale, and I went over and they weren't. I don't know why I thought they'd be selling it, but that was cool.
You'd have to buy the player as well.
Yeah, totally. And they have like neat little things. There's a phone booth, but inside the phone booth, they have like, different, things that kind of relate to the series and the world that the characters inhabit. The funny thing was I could have sworn like Esprit sponsored this thing. They had Esprit everywhere. And I don't even know if Esprit still exists, but you remember that was the thing back in the day, right?
What's so ironic is that I remember the 80s,
Yeah.
and we were all so desperate to leave the 80s, and yet it hasn't died. It's come back to haunt us,
Yeah, and the funny thing too is it's like what we're looking at here. A fair amount of this probably was created by somebody who never lived in the 80s, and what it reminds me of is being in the 80s, 90s, and seeing like this resurgence of 1950s diners and places like that, So it's kind of like it's like a weird fever dream. It's like this alternate reality of the 80s,
Right. It's like those also popular in the 80s when they did those clay reconstructions of like here's a Cro-Magnon skull, and we're gonna use science phrenology to like recreate what the face would look like based on the skull.
Totally. Yeah. And there's some movies that I see now where they talk about the 80s and they're actually talking about the 90s, and like because whoever wrote it or directed it has no idea of the difference,
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher went raving or something.
Yeah, exactly. So there's just some details. I always love these things. I love like the kind of immersive experience stuff where there's all these little details and callbacks. There's the the fun of there's the Vecna character. It was kind of cool, pretty well sculpted,
Yeah.
Demogorgon. And then this was the bar. We got into the bar. My wife has an Amex, and the cool thing was if you have an Amex card, you get a free drink. So we went to the bar and got a free drink. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And I love the 1980s like lightning bolt, kind of metal, like
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
They had some of the props from the show. There's Eleven's outfit from one of the episodes. And there's the drinks. So I forget what her drink was. It was like a, grenadine something. My drink was called the Upside Down. I do not drink a lot, and I haven't drank in a long time. I haven't drank hard liquor in a long time. This thing was strong. I mean, as soon as he gave it to my wife, he goes, "Oh, that one?" He goes, "It's strong." And I could only get like halfway through it, and I was spinning. So I normally don't do this, but I couldn't finish it. I just said, I'm not going to make the ride home. So I went ahead and handed it back after I was halfway through. It's like bourbon and I don't know, all tons of stuff.
So you stopped that sideways rather than the full upside down.
Exactly. There she is. It's cool. And then on the outside again, there was the the Hawkins police.
Yeah.
They had a Camaro, and it was funny because it just had Esprit merchandise and bags and stuff all over the place, which I thought was funny. And then there was the outside of it, like there, nice mural.
Oh yeah.
And then here, but the actual experience was, which we couldn't take photos of, was super impressive. So you walk in, and it's almost like the whole guise is that you're going into the testing center where sleep tests are conducted, essentially to kind of figure out who's psychic or not. And as you go through it, you go through a psychic test where you're in a room that's just like the show, and you have to go ahead and do these different tests by solving puzzles. And then there's a scientist there, and eventually by doing these tests, he determines that all the people in the room, there's about 30 of us, are going to be divided into 3 groups. So group A, group B, group C. One group is considered the ones that are intuitive psychics. The other ones are like powerful psychics and whatever. And each of you are given a gesture that you're supposed to do at a certain time. So we were in the intuitive psychic group. So whenever we're called upon, we have the professor actually put our hands on our foreheads and we're supposed to bear down. But they had some great effects. So for instance, like when people are doing things, the scientist is testing, they had a soda can on the table, and it's probably magnets. The soda can slid over, and then one of the other soda cans just crushed on its own. And then when it got to us, he was talking about how his fear is that he's scared of spiders, and he wanted us to use our intuitive power. So we started focusing in the vents. All these spiders started coming out. And the way they did it was pretty cool. They basically just had a projector with animated, spiders, and they just aimed it there. So the leg was crawling out and swarming back in,
Uh-huh.
So that was cool. And then eventually it goes to another room, and there's a part where you get trapped in a room in the lab where all the Demogorgon dogs are attacking the people outside. And essentially you're in this room where it's like all frosted glass, right? Like a control room. So you can see the silhouettes. It's obviously TVs, silhouettes of these figures running past, and then the Demogorgons getting them and smashing them up against the wall and eating them. But it looked really, really impressive. It really felt like this thing was right outside the window, And then the whole thing culminates where you get out into this. You go into this one room. You actually go into the Upside Down. So you have this plastic wall with like fleshy matter that you have to walk through, and then you put on these 3D glasses and you go in this room, and it's like a cinerama dome. It's like a arch like this, in front of you, like 180. All these huge floor to ceiling screens and 3D projected images with your 3D glasses with the actual actors from the show interacting with all the enemies and stuff like that, and they're jumping at you, but they're in 3D, and then they get exploded in front of you and stuff. It was really cool, really, really cool. So if it comes to somebody else's town, I highly recommend it. It was definitely worth it.
Oh, that sounds like awesome. It's just so fascinating how we're in this there's a whole conversation to be had about like that kind of meta storytelling and the immersive experience, and whether it's like the what you call it, Avatar, the Way of Water, and the new immersiveness of that, or or Stranger Things, right? Like we want that complete experience, and
oh yeah,
and it's always the trick of how can you do that on a budget,
No, totally. And I had heard actually one of the women that lives in my condo, or used to live in my condo, was doing that kind of work. She was in this industry of creating these immersive experiences for San Diego Comic Con. She did The Boys, the one for the first season of The Boys. And I think what they said is because when I first started going back to conventions, it was all about getting cool swag. I mean, they were giving some really good premiere stuff, but then it shifted to experiences. And the reason I think it shifted to experiences, one, you don't have to actually give stuff away, but two, it becomes something where the actual people experiencing it, the audience, becomes the distributors of the content on social media. So if you can create an experience where somebody takes a selfie or does this and that, now you're using them to flood out to a wider audience, right? So I think but I love that stuff. I think it's great. I love the artistry of it, you know?
Late stage capitalism raises its head again, right?
Exactly.
Selling vaporware.
exactly. You know, I was going to try and do something, you know how it is, great ideas and then it costs money, but I was thinking for Shadow Ghost, I was going to actually put like a flyer for the Kung Fu school in it. And then I was going to go ahead and get like a Google Voice phone number and like record a message, like it's the Sifu saying, if you want to sign up for classes XYZ, and then put that inside, have that printed out. And then if somebody on the off chance would call that number, they'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm interacting with it, but
Well, I mean, you should definitely do that, but why stop there? Because I was thinking like an official Shadow Ghost tour of Chinatown.
Yeah.
With a staged, mugging or something like that. With a staged rescue by the titular character himself, right?
Exactly. Why not? Yeah, I remember back when I worked at Malibu, right? Malibu was so cool because I was a teenager, but because it was a smaller company and I had started when it was really small, I could talk to anybody. I mean, I could talk to the president of the company and they would talk to me. It was never like anybody was like, hey kid, get out of here, right? So Malibu had this really cool villain designed by Howard Chaykin, right? For the Ultraverse. His name was Rafferty. And it was a great idea. Rafferty was a serial killer and his target were superheroes, were superpowered. So you just have, it was like a very interesting thing. Instead of Thanos coming in and like, trying to destroy the world, you literally just have this psychopath come into the comic books as a crossover and is picking off people in every book one at a time. Like, who's he going to kill next? So I had this idea. I told Roland, man, who, Silverline now, right? I told Roland, I said, hey, what if we go to a con and we introduce like a new superhero, right? And then we hire somebody dressed as Rafferty and just kill him in front of everybody at the con. And like, yeah, that's a good idea. Talk to the creative director. So I just walk over to the creative director, Tom Mason, and started telling him that, and at the time, the only costume that we had was the character named Mantra, which was a very voluptuous woman. He said, Kurtis, we can't have, I won't word it the way he worded it. He said, Kurtis, if we have that, the only other costume we have is Mantra. And he said, if he tries to do that to her, there might be a wardrobe malfunction. So I said, okay.
Right. Plus, you wouldn't want to be refrigerating that particular character either, right?
No, totally. So I said, okay. But yeah. But
no, I love it because you could just see it. Like issue 1 would be death of superhero,
yeah.
right there. Like,
oh, totally.
One issue and he's already dead.
Well, they did one thing. I don't know if I told you this. I thought was fascinating, and Robert Kirkman of The Walking Dead did it to finish off his series. We have somebody here. Hey, how's it going?
Barney, welcome to the show. Glad to see you.
Well, hello. Yeah, what Malibu did and Robert Kirkman did in The Walking Dead is they actually killed. They had an actual book called The Exiles, which was this book superhero team that was supposed to come up before the Ultraverse, and at the last minute they said, you know what? Let's bring it out with the Ultraverse and let's kill the entire team. So they had like 3 or 4 issues. And they went ahead, but they solicited to the distributors and to the retailers that there was going to be 6 issues or something like that, so that it was nobody knew. And then just in the 4th issue, just everybody gets killed, and the fans loved it because it came out of nowhere. The retailers hated it.
Then it reminds me of the Peter Milligan, Michael Allred X-Force did a similar thing, right? They introduced the whole team and killed off like 5 out of 6 of them.
Wow.
In that 4th issue.
Oh, that's crazy. That's good. Yeah, I heard that Robert Kirkman did that with the last issue of Walking Dead. It was like they solicited 1 or 2 more issues beyond it and just ended it, So it's an interesting stunt, you know.
Yeah, those meta gimmicks. I mean, it's a little bit playing with fire, but I mean, there's ways to do it. You know, like I don't think you could do it the same way now, but there's new things that you could do now instead, like what you're doing with the credits, right? The end credits, or other ways to kind of immerse people into the experience.
Totally, definitely. I think that's what I like, and I don't know how you feel, but what I like about whether it's my own comic book or having my own online martial arts school, because it's just me, I can pivot at any time, and that's the fun part. It's like there's no sit down meeting where we have to discuss with the committee. It's like, hey, I think this is a good idea. Okay, I'll do it. That's so fun. About being
yeah. I mean, room to experiment, room to do immersive things. Yeah. But I was wondering, let me get your opinion, on the topic of shadow ghosts and immersiveness.
Yes.
Should we share with our viewers that little shadow ghost bit of media that we've cooked up?
I agree. I think let's go for it.
All right. So do you want to set up the context while I pull it up?
Sure. And this is the Kung Fu Skills one, is that?
No, this is the one. I guess I'll set it up.
I was just saying.
This is a short time lapse of the illustration process for the video, for the artwork that I provided for you to announce the Shadow Ghost music video.
Yes, that's right.
Right? It's all about this immersive thing that we're talking about.
Totally.
So I have it here.
All right.
It's just under 4 minutes. Yeah. So let's give it a play and see what it looks like.
Sounds good. Awesome.
Yeah, so I think my technique has improved significantly since I created that piece. Just looking at it and kind of narrating in my head like what I was doing at the time, importing some layers of like atmosphere and then, masking and then like the color layers. Yeah, I think I would do that piece very differently if I was to do it again.
Really, I love how it turned out. You know what I thought was so cool about it is at that point there was really not a lot of information about the series, just a couple of character designs, right? And maybe like a few illustrations. And what was so neat is watching what you came up with. And what was so cool is even though we didn't talk about what to do, we have so much of the same influences, And so it was like you just got it. You got the idea, you got the tone, the whole thing, And of course Chinatown, and I love how it had that kind of Bronze Age, kind of Frank Miller, Daredevil, cover vibe to it, So it just turned out awesome. Great work.
I mean that's some high praise, And I remember like, on the topic of like capturing martial arts in comics, that was the big thing, was like, how do you do that with a single image? And I remember I think I showed you a couple of the initial sketches. And what I ended up doing was I kept adding more opponents to the, it started off with disarming one dude, and then it turned into two. And then I think by the end of that piece, he's taking on like 5 guys with one guy shooting him and him,
Well, I love the flicking the wrist with which I love because that's a big thing, right? When you're using the butterfly knife or sword, as they call it, you use the backhand to actually pull and deflect, and then the front end is where the business is done with the cutting, right? And so to see that backwards motion deflecting the bullet was like, you got it. Definitely great stuff,
Yeah. Well, that was a fun one. And I think it also sets up our next subject, right? Because we're talking here about fight choreography and martial arts and comics. So,
yes.
It's almost as though we planned this whole thing out, right? Thematically.
Yes. And I just got a text message from this individual saying, I was asking if they'll be on our show coming up. We'll give the date in just a second. He said, absolutely. He says he's going to get us his picture and bio today and wants to know if we want any additional art. I'll respond to him after the show. So I think without further ado, I'll give it to you, Patrick. Feel free to introduce.
Well, you know what? I think you should do the voiceover while I set up the graphic.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thing. So
sure.
Starting with this, where is it?
Excellent. This Sunday, Jeff Johnson, phenomenal artist, martial artist, and somebody who works extensively in the animation industry, will be on our show this Sunday evening at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And he's also the author of that book there, How to Draw Fight Scenes Like a Pro. Really great artist, really nice guy. Done some amazing books way back in the day. He did for the Ultras comic books. He did Solitaire. He's also done quite a bit for the Big Two, Marvel and DC, and also did a really cool series called Way of the Rat by CrossGen with Chuck Dixon as the writer. So his pedigree speaks for itself. But he will be on this Sunday. He just confirmed with us. And on that note, we will go ahead and say it will be on. So please swing by.
So that's Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Definitely.
Very excited to go and get into the nitty-gritty of martial arts and comics and sequential art, the whole thing. Yes. Big fan of Way of the Rat. I have those. Like I said, those comics were also in the official Kung Fu magazine library.
Yeah.
Which, with alongside Shaolin Cowboy and the Malibu's Bruce Lee comics.
Yeah.
And a few other titles. So yeah, it'll be great fun. So in just a few short days, I've just hit post on the announcement. Nice. So like and subscribe. Find us on Facebook and YouTube.
Definitely. Make sure to go ahead and visit our various sites for Patrick's book, tigerstail.com.
Yeah, I have some new every Tuesday we update.
Mhm.
And if we're not updating Tiger's Tail, we're updating Plugo Arts.
Exactly. So make sure
We,
to
as in me, right?
I always say we because it sounds better. Like, oh, the team over at theshadowghost.com. Make sure to keep checking us out. We got a really cool merch store. You can get this official Shadow Ghost shirt, and also if you're interested in taking online kung fu classes with yours truly, you can go to tigercrane.net. So I think that about does us. What do you think?
This was great. I think we should. I know we talked about not having end credits
Yes, that's okay.
and not having our little Marvel surprise.
I like it though.
Which we should bring back in some way. But I think what we could do is close out the way we ended with our little, Comics Fu Show outro, and then hopefully we'll be seeing you folks and a lot more on Sunday for the big talk on how to draw fight scenes like a pro.
With Jeff Johnson. So
yes, indeed.
See you folks then. Take care.
I'm Patrick Lugo, author, illustrator, comic creator, and art director for Kung Fu Magazine.
I'm Kurtis Fujita, comic book creator, also a Kung Fu instructor.
The Comics Fu Show, where we stand at the crossroads of comics, Kung Fu, and all kinds of crazy pop culture.